Yes, I was able to listen to the show. I was here all the time.
Good. Okay, please.
I should be on the monitor.
Okay.
Well, the weather here is absolutely stunningly beautiful.
Okay.
Now for days, it's a feeling of summer and holiday in the city. I wish anyone could be here. It's absolutely lovely. And yes, I'm certain that I'm in Münster,
Yes.
but I'm not so certain how the weather will be in the next few days, because changes have been said will come after tomorrow. So, but until then, there's a wonderful weather.
Thank you. That's really good. Now, following on from what Brother Femi just said, as he mentioned that people have faith, and it just occurred to me that, it doesn't matter what background you're from. Most people, those people with religion, most of them they believe in God. So, I was going to ask you really, should we just have trust in God that things will work out, with this, because people, like Brother Femi mentioned, people are getting anxious about things might happen to them. They just don't know what the future is going to be like, and of course here we're talking about spiritual things, but obviously the earthly things are part of that as well. Your job, your home, your education of children, and so on and so on. So, what my question is really, is belief in God or trust in God, is that sufficient to sort of cope, or is that required to have sort of to handle this uncertainty, or do we need to know more, understand more? That's to you, Brother Ryan.
Okay, let me just repeat what has been said before. There are things we are absolutely certain of, can be absolutely certain of, and there are things we are certain that we never can be certain of. The things we are certain that we never can be certain of relate all to the human being. The human being in the last analysis has always free will and can decide this way or that way, and although he should strive to become more reliable and honest and truthful, he can also
Yes, are you there?
Okay, I hope it works.
Yeah.
I just said the uncertainty is only brought about by the human being, and that is because he has got the free will. He's endowed with the free will. We cannot take it away from him, and it cannot be taken away from him. And this free will allows him to decide this way or that way. He can be honest and trying to be reliable and truthful, and that would increase the reliability of the interactions between human beings. But he can also decide to try to cheat someone in a business action, or for whatever selfish reasons, and then he will become, he's not reliable anymore. You cannot trust his words anymore. He's probably lying to achieve some selfish ends, and so on. So now, talking about the things we can be absolutely certain of, it has been, previous speaker said, there's of course God himself and his will, and many other things. I mean, you will come in this drowning state of in which we find ourselves. The Grail message immediately spreads certainties, spreads statements, and soon will one come to the conclusion, well, I trust the vibration which there is in the Grail message, and I trust what he's saying. And he's saying something like, spiritual bread immediately refreshes, truth quickens, and light vitalizes. I'm talking about all the books which flood humanity nowadays, and he gives immediately there a certainty. He's saying that as a statement, and for you it is to find out, is that really true? Can I look at the books and separate them out and say there are books which quicken you, and there are books which weary you, and the wearying books which are complicated prove to be barren, and unfortunately those books are never right. And I can apply this principle, and I can say, okay, this book I'm reading now, which promises the truth and promises some strong support and help, how is it? Does it refresh me immediately? Does it quicken me? Does the light in it vitalizes me, animates me, or is it something which is on the wearying side and exhausts me, and I have to think through thousands of complicated thoughts, and I never get anywhere, and I feel I'm lost in a jungle, in a complicated intellectual junk. And being able to just applying this single sentence, by applying it, you will find out, oh, it is true, I can push away, cast aside many books which apparently proclaim to shed light, because just by applying this simple sentence to separate the good books from the bad books, the books which help you, which give you strength right away or not. And if you apply it, you will become more certain, and you will start trusting the author. And the same thing is with God in the last analysis. Faith is just not enough. We have to be convinced. You have to come to a conviction that God is there, and that his will is there, and that we interact with his will. It's a realization, but the logicality is convincing with which Aptoshin argues. And reading the book, you will become very quickly completely convinced, yes, there is a God, yes, and there is a will of his, and I'm actually interacting with it every moment, through each of my emotions, through every word of mine, and through every action of mine. And there will be no doubt, and there will never be any doubt of that, of the laws of creation, and in the end, of the Grail message itself, because you can put everything to a test, and everything is logical. One follows from the other. There's no contradiction anywhere if you think deeply enough. The other point, of course, is, do you understand those certainties? Completely different question. Of course, you will never understand those certainties completely, but you will never understand God. We will be always in a state of amazement if we are open, and of what the laws of creation can create in terms of beautiful things if we apply them, if we apply them in painting, if we apply them in architecture. Always new wonders can arise, and there are even some things which are certain of. We will know the Grail message proves, then, or states quite simply, we never will be able to understand or grasp, like God being so immense, so far above us, that he's simply forever incomprehensible to the human being. But we will always come to a greater understanding. In fact, it will be infinite for infinity. Our understanding will grow, but it will always be within the limits of the human being. But the conviction is always there. There is a God, there is his will, but we will be astonished and in a permanent state of wonder when, on our spiritual journey, if we increase our knowledge about this will and about God. And the conviction is always there. But for the normal person, of course, for the normal listener here who hasn't touched the Grail message yet, it's a state, of course, he has to come to, and I can only testify that I think this work is completely logical, and it proves you will be soon convinced that God exists, that there is a God, and that is a benevolent God in everything he does, where you can feel at home, because that's the other thing. The things which are truthful are reliable, and reliability makes you feel at home, because we need reliability. Things where there's no more reliability, they come to a halt. It's like sand, because we're standing on quicksand all the time. We cannot trust anything. That slows everything down. Also economies, interactions between human beings, and it will always create disaster on the personal level, on the political level, between peoples. And but we have to become more reliable, and by being more truthful and by aligning ourselves with those laws of creation. I mean, if you look at the simple sun, everyone knows the sun has existed for I don't know how many hundreds of millions of years. It has never gone up it has never risen 1 second late. Never. It came up every day on exactly the time it should come. And the sunset was also exactly at the same time it should be. All over the earth. We can completely rely on it. Of course, these are natural laws, and we know natural laws they never change one little bit, otherwise there would be not natural laws. And a human being must strive to become a little bit like nature around us, become as reliable in his actions. So if we take a little bit the examples of, let me be like the sun and moon, keep to my schedules. When I make an appointment, I try to keep it. I'm not giving excuses and things. I try to be as punctual to the second as the sun rises and the sun sets. In this way, that endeavor on a personal level will change the whole society very quickly. So to come back to the point, I hope that answered some of the questions, or of the points in your question.
Yes, thank you. That was very helpful, Brother Rhino. We covered quite a lot of things there, so give me a chance to ask some more questions. So, dear listeners, I want to let you know you're listening to Blessed Radio on the Tuesday night spiritual discussion program. And the aim of the show is to work in the light of truth, the real message by Hashem. And we have a topic every week. The topic for tonight is living with uncertainty. And just going back, if you want to know more about the real message, you can go to this website, which is called www.realmessage.com. Let's spell it www.realmessage.com. And you can join us with any questions or comments on this topic of tonight, which is living with uncertainty. The number is in UK 079 444 313 66. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And of course, if you're outside of UK, you just need to have the 0044 79 444 313 66. And Brother Gregory, I've got a question for you now. Yeah, Brother Gregory, following from what Brother Reinhard has been saying, you know, it's we talk about the Great Message provides certainty, and it gives you clues of how to find certainty. But obviously, I would say most of the people do not have the Great Message, and so they either have a certain belief, or maybe they don't have a belief. So, and in reality, we know that most people, they only ask, let's say, it is fear that makes people like want to act, to ask for help or things like this. So my question is really this: can we human beings, sorry, I'm just thinking how to say this to you. So basically, we talk about faith and belief in God and so on like that. But So what my question really is it only when we are in trouble that we will, then we need the help, and only then we turn to help, and to God, in this case I'm saying God here, or to faith? Or is there a way human beings can really, it's just like you want to have work to do, and you leave it to the last minute to do everything, and then only this deadline makes you sort of force you to actually change your ways. So my question really is this: will human beings ever be turn to God in a way that is not out of emergency, if I can say, or out of trouble, or do they have to be basically come to a catastrophe that they need to ask help from God? That's to Brother Gregory.
First, thanks for that particular question, which is a very general and generic question when it refers to human beings. The basic fact is that human beings or human spirit has free will. And it is impossible to know how they will decide. For the free will is an intrinsic property, an intrinsic feature of the human spirit. So there are some who, from the outset, will make use of the help which has been woven within creation, and in making use of this help, in examining all as many possibilities, that process gives them conviction, because they are examining and they can put in something, they can see the response, and before long they can perceive help everywhere. There is another group who does not. Are you there?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
There is another group who ignores everything out of indolence, without caring to examine anything, only thinking that at the last second they will turn round out of fear. That is the group we just mentioned. That group is likely to face the too late, because the preparation which is required for maturity has been ignored. So it is not possible to know how the human spirit will decide, because it has free will. However, all contingencies have been put in place so much that whenever the human spirit asks or seeks for help, and that cry out for help is genuine, then within the region it is able to find the right type of help. Such a help is what we now have in the walk in the light of truth. This walk is not a religion, is not a cult, but it's a walk which explains the laws through which creation even came into existence. And because the human spirit is an integral part of creation, the human spirit needs to develop from an unconscious spirit germ to a self-conscious spirit germ. All the things that are necessary have been placed, have been made available to it for it to make that decision. One can then say that help is always available for those who are discerning. When they become discerning, when they are in difficulty and they are in jeopardy, or they start off from the beginning and trustfully make use of what is available, it all amounts to the same thing. But for those who ignore the help which is available, they are likely to face it too late.
Thank you, Brother Gregory. I'm going to go to Brother Femi now. Brother Femi, Brother Gregory spoke about there's being too late for some people, if they don't, get up with this danger. But because at the end of the day, we've said that it is now essential that we do need to know the laws of this nature and creation. And just because nature, we know that how it works is the sun comes, like Brother Ryan said, it always rises at a certain time and sets on a certain time, and it's totally reliable, 100%, because it's that part of that nature. And the human beings need to learn from this nature. Now, and we know that we've been around thousands and thousands of years, and let's say, yes, we do learn things from nature, but still, a lot of things are not right. So, and Brother Gregory, basically everybody's mentioned this, that man also has free will, and we cannot determine where the free will, the choice or decision that man will make will lead him. So I'm going to ask a slightly different question on that. And we know that God's help is always there, it can be asked for. So what I want to say, is it always like whatever man endeavors to go for, what he will do, like when he doesn't know where it will end up for him, that might be success, or this is about something, create some invention or whatever it is, let's say I'm thinking about nuclear weapon as an example. We know that they're sort of under control, but they can also be, if it was in the wrong hands, it can also be out of control. So is there something maybe you could say the human being can do, which will just lead to total disaster, that to just wipe everything out? Can the human being do that? Or will the laws ensure that the earth can't be destroyed, because at the end of the day the laws are stronger than the human being? So is there a limit to what a human being can do that, because we know that God's will rules over all, but can the human being, through his free will and through what he creates or makes, the invention that he makes, can he actually cause disaster, which is like from which nothing, it's like there cannot be a recovery from that disaster?
Well, whether there can be recovery or there cannot be recovery is not something which I can specifically say.
Yes.
But can a human being cause disaster through his free will? Absolutely. Happens every day. Both at the personal level, marriages get destroyed because somebody makes a stupid decision using his or her free will. At the national level, economies get destroyed because governments or representatives of governments make ridiculous decisions that messes up the lives of millions of individuals in the process. So at the global level, absolutely, President Trump may decide to make a decision that causes a huge setback to the world. We know what has been happening in North and South Korea. It's amazing that the Northern Korean leader seems to have made a radical change in his views and in his standing. Exactly why that is happening is anybody's guess. But the reality, which again comes back to this whole topic that we're discussing this evening, uncertainty. So the United States and the West, as it's called, had a particular view of what the Northern Korean leadership was all about, how they stood, and how they would react. Now the whole of that paradigm is shifting, and so that is bound to create a certain level of uncertainty in those political circles. Why is he changing? What does he want? What is his objective? What is his motive? And so on and so forth. That's at the national, international level. Now, this program is really attempting to look at the individual and what the individual can do to improve himself or herself towards a self-recognition and self-understanding of their purpose here on earth. So if we look at it from that perspective, there is the individual. The individual has his or her body, the individual has a brain and has an intellect, which we all use every day. I wake up, I'm thinking of how I'm going to spend my day, I've got to go to the office, I bring my intellect into play. That is a fundamental aspect of being human here in the physical world. The intellect, which we all rely on, is bound to the material world. Then I have my spirit. I have a spiritual world within me. My spirit has what we refer to as the intuition. And so my intellect is a function of my physical body. My intuition is a function of my spiritual existence. Unfortunately, the vast majority of humans today are completely subject to their intellect. Whenever we have a scenario that we need to work through, we tend to rely on our brain to try and do the full thinking, the mapping out of the solution, creating bridges where we know that there are gaps that need to be bridged. And invariably, because the intellect can only be limited to the physical, that is, to that which is worldly, unfortunately, it cannot come up with an all-encompassing, all-embracing solution. And so, whichever way you look at it, there will always be gaps. And those gaps is what creates the uncertainty. I'm sure that all of us at one stage or the other have had issues of a physical, material nature where we did not know what the answer or what the outcome was going to be. We felt that we were trapped. We were desperately trying to work out a solution to that issue. We could not find what that solution is, and we become extremely anxious. Some people become incredibly depressed in the process because they cannot find the solution. Why? Because they've strictly limited themselves to that which is of an earthly nature, which is your brain and your thinking. Now, when we move into the realm of the spiritual, which embraces and encompasses everything, the level of wisdom, of insight, of clarity that can be attained is absolutely amazing. Now the question is, how many people have actually developed themselves to a stage where they're able to enjoy that level of recognition and certainty in their deliberations? Coupled with that is this whole concept of faith in your creator. Having faith in your creator, or in a creator, or in something, means understanding what that something is. And so if I claim to have faith in God Almighty, a fundamental part of having real faith is actually understanding Him. In trying to understand His nature, by default, I need to understand the laws that He has woven into His creation. As was already explained earlier on, if a key part of the Creator is consistency, and reliability. And all that pervades the totality of his creation in terms of how his laws unfold consistently, on time, in a perfect manner. If I, as a human being, if I pay attention to these things, then naturally, in the way I conduct myself on a day-to-day basis, because I understand, or I'm beginning to have more clarity on how the laws of life works, and therefore I'm beginning to have more clarity on what is expected from me by my Creator. Again, people tend to make a big mistake here. God is all loving, all forgiving, all embracing. We continue to forget that a relationship is a two-way thing. And so, even though we have this incredible, ununderstandable love that he continues to bestow upon us on a daily basis, the fact still remains that there are demands, there are expectations that we have to fulfill as well to continue to access that love in a vibrant, vigorous, and in a real manner. And so the human being who preoccupies himself or herself with the need to understand the nature of his Creator and begins to live in a way that upholds that which is expected from him or her, such a human being will have a much greater access to their intuition. And in having access to your intuition, you will begin to get insights, clarities, and a certain level of confidence that the average person will never ever be able to attain. And so through that confidence that you begin to arrive at, yes, there will still be anxieties and uncertainties in your day-to-day existence, but the way you would be able to approach them, the way you will be able to walk through them, the lessons and recognitions that you will be able to achieve through those experiences that many would probably deem to be very negative and unnecessary experiences, will be such that you will continue to give deep gratitude from within your soul. And so, coming back to the point that is being made here, uncertainty is normal. Uncertainty is expected. The level of uncertainty in today's world is increasing massively. That massive increase and the need to have stability in the world of uncertainty demands from each individual that they make the effort to connect with their real being, with their spirit man, with their real self. And that demand and that effort to really understand your spirit will fundamentally lead you back to your Creator. The Grail message is an amazing help in achieving these things, and I would strongly recommend for our leaders, for our listeners, excuse me, to examine this work objectively, see what you can make of it, and try to begin to understand yourself, to understand your spirit, and to truly develop a relationship with your Creator that moves you back onto the right path, that connects you to your spirituality. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Femi. Dear listeners, yes, as Brother Femi has mentioned, the Grail message gives answers to these questions that we are asking. And so if you want to find out about the Grail message or get a copy for yourself, you can go to this website. Of course, you can Google as well. And this one we know you can find it, which is www.grailmessage.org. www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that www.grail, G-R-A-I-L, message, MESSAGE.com. And the show tonight is Living with Uncertainty. Now we've been on YouTube as well. You can go to Raina. What I want to say.
Can I?
Yes, go ahead. You want to say something?
Yeah, I just would like to add something to what Brother Femi said, just to give another aspect of it which we've not been talking about. And he talked about the spiritual man and the intellectual man. The intellectual man just relying completely when making decisions on his intellectual powers, which are earthbound, which is just reason, more or less. What we will find is that this intellectual man, of course, will feel more and more isolated, because he's isolating himself in this universe. He will feel alone, a product of chance, of perhaps even not knowing anything. Has he got free will? Probably not. Probably yes, perhaps. He just does not know anything, and he won't feel at home. And that is the aspect I want to come about. Feeling at home. That's a wonderful feeling. And we as human beings, we need to feel at home in order to develop healthily. Whereas the spiritual person who tries to understand the laws of creation, the will of God, and who becomes acquainted with God, and in the end becomes convinced that there is a God, he will then suddenly also develop a feeling of being at home. I'm taking now home as a very vast thing. Perhaps you remember and this feeling at home is a wonderful thing. It's just, you feel just protected, and in the last analysis, you know nothing can happen with you. You are like a child on the trampoline, and if you jump with the right rhythms, you can do the most wonderful somersaults in the air, because you know there is a swinging rhythm of the trampoline to which you have to adjust. And this adjustment, of course, is the laws of creation. But if you do not adjust, if you jump on the trampoline with the wrong rhythm, it just ends in disasters. You fall over and are thrown off. So what I want to say, when the astronauts went to the moon several times, one of them said, the exciting thing is not the moon, but the wonderful thing is to see the Earth rise from the moon. And this wonderful blue planet, this blue-white planet. And he said, then suddenly you realize this is our home. It has been prepared for us. It is not like any other planet, and we have studied now thousands of planets. This is a wonderful thing. From the beginning of the universe worked towards this wonderful place in our Milky Way, where we can feel at home, where we can breathe, where we have fresh water, where we have blue skies and rain, all the things which make life possible and make the evolution possible, which leads to the human being and all the animals which are there. It's an unbelievable chance, and you will then feel there is some evolutionary laws, a master plan, an intelligence behind it, which has prepared this planet for us, and you will feel at home on it. And you know, like when some people today say, oh, the future of humanity is on some other planet like Mars, it's just so unbelievably stupid. Everyone just be able to think a little bit clearly knows it is so hostile. If we cannot make peace on Earth under these very easy circumstances where I just can walk out and breathe and go on a holiday and swim in the sea, how can I do it on Mars? Why should I be able to keep peace on Mars and not kill one another, where I have to create the atmosphere where I cannot grow anything, where it's completely barren, just dust, and where it's in the night minus 800 degrees on the day everything bakes. Even from a technological point, it is impossible simply to establish life. And still there are running people around saying, oh, the future of humanity is not on Earth anymore, it's beyond the star. That was Musk said that. So a spiritual person will say, it's our home, and he feel at home, and he feels how this wonderful planet has been prepared for it, and we need this feeling of being at home. And then you also realize there's a benevolent Father. And when I say the first words of the Lord's Prayer, Father, who thou art in heaven, you know what that means. I'm protected. I do not understand everything. I might not understand the laws of evolution which created that earth and what had to happen to prepare this earth. But intuitively, I believe it has been prepared for us, for humanity to live. And it's that feeling at home which will also separate people, which gives you reliance and stability in your life, because you know, I'm at home. I know there are the laws of creation. I know there's a benevolent Father watching above everything, even if this watching is completely different from how we imagine it, but still everything is being watched. And it's then a wonderful feeling of security and safety which comes about, and the intellectual man will not have the security. He will feel more and more lonely and cast out and a product of chance. And in fact, psychologically, it's a terrible state he will get in. And of course, lots of all the depressions and psychological illnesses, they arise from all those things. They're all interrelated. So studying, searching God, and in the end finding God and being convinced that there is a God, and seeing him in everything around you, even looking at this blue planet from the moon, will make you feel at home and will make you feel much safer, a safety which the unfortunate intellectual people lack and must lead to despondency.
Thank you, Brother Rainer. For me, you have sort of direct the people to see that there is the intellect, and then there is the intuition, and there are things that you can find from the intuition and the things you can find from the intellect. But and there are two different things, but one for sure where we want to feel at home, the point you were making. You know, yes, the intellect might say, oh, we can't live on this earth because we are fighting so much, we need to go somewhere else. And so it will come up with this idea of going to another planet. And yet, as you say, on the earth, we just look around and we see there's so many things here already, and which can not, no matter how great man becomes, it will, it is not nature. You can't make those things that nature can. And we know that we can't stop earthquakes, we can't stop right now in Hawaii, there's this magma coming out, and it's coming from all different parts. They don't know where it's going next. So these things are bigger than us, but obviously somehow the human beings still think they can do something bigger than that. So my question to Brother Gregory really, Brother Gregory, there are certain things you can, this is again talking about uncertainty, living with uncertainty. All of us have questions in our life. Who am I, like Brother Femi was saying, where do I come from, what is my purpose, and all these things. And obviously, some of these things you have to explore and just try this. Your parents will put you in this, let's say they get you to swim and they get you to play music, piano, or something like that, and then through that, trying these different things, you get to discover, what is your talent. But then there's these spiritual questions, meaning of life. Why am I here? And you could say that is also like an uncertainty. And yes, we talk about the laws, there, and we know that God has put these laws there, and they're perfect, and everything works within these laws. But there's still other questions, like as I say, about who I am, and we've talked about spiritual things. So, Brother Gregory, where can we, or how can we find out about those things? Yes, there are religions, we know, but how Brother Ryan has been saying is, we don't want it in an intellectual way that you still have question afterwards. We want something where you feel at home, that you can see that this answers my question. So, Brother Gregory, sorry to say such a long-winded way, but how can we answer those questions, spiritual questions about us?
Thank you. How can we answer those spiritual questions about us? It is, maybe one needs to look again at what uncertainty is. It is very clear that what one does not yet know, one classifies it as uncertain. However, when one gets to know it, becomes certain. Sometimes the forms that one uses in the knowledge or the knowing of it becomes so bogus or so great that many give up. The human spirit needs to ask itself, why am I here? One is now bound to make a very simple but general and clear statement that in every society, that in any set of society or realms, there are three basic things which can never be denied, which when the human spirit asks itself, it can certainly agree with. And that is, in any set, in any realm, be it in the physical, there are those who constitute that realm. Whether they are stones, human beings, animals, plants, elements. One may say these constituents, one may refer to them as the substances that make up this particular realm. That is one apart. Secondly, there is the administration of that realm, or the smooth running of that realm. This calls for the laws which have been enacted by the creator of the realm. So one may refer to this as the law that helps in the smooth running of the activities that constitute that realm. And finally, which is very important, the power that is utilized in the running of this realm. Intrinsically, the human spirit knows this. What it doesn't know is the simplicity, the regularity, the vibrance, the forms that have come through these three observations. For many, it becomes a cult. For many of the religions, so-called, started from cults, from simple recognition in observing activities in nature, in being able to perceive their activities in nature, the perception of which in initial instance were physical, gross material, but on closer examination became more of an ethereal observation of the forms and rules. And as time went on, as the people of the Jews and those days, all the Greeks, these developments grew gradually until that which they were observing, they could come to certain clarity, and they had certainty. But whatever lied above them, whatever lay above their current recognition, became uncertain, because they were not sure what existed there. But they could sense that power moved all this, the consequence of these different realms. So the human spirit must start as a child in its recognition, a step-by-step approach. It is the step-by-step approach that helps, that grounds certainty, not trying to understand everything at once, but in humility, in taking a bit at a time to grapple with, in the self-examination, rigorous examination, not assuming that yes, it is there and it is correct, but in the continuous examination, many various facets of nature reveal themselves. That continuous exaction is what grants certainty. For the human spirit senses that the more it exerts itself, all its abilities, the intellectual or spiritual, the more creation is able, or nature is able to reveal itself. That is what grants certainty, and that is what is expected. The walk in the light of truth testifies to this, and that is why it is helpful for anyone who is listening to these programs, first, never to take our word for it, but to avail themselves with the work, to examine it with all their abilities. In that process, they will gradually leave behind the uncertainties, and in a step-by-step approach will become certain of this power, of this wisdom, of this love, of this help, which lies in nature. When it is said, help is always there. That is the task of the human spirit.
Thank you very much, Brother Gregory. You told what you have said is life is a journey, and it's an exploration, and you have to go step by step. So, and as soon as you say that, you can feel at ease because you don't need to overwhelm yourself. Oh, this is a massive world. We can never understand it. How can you know about life? It's not possible. It's a mystery. It can only be a mystery. But now, when you break it down to say step by step, and you talk about the different civilizations that have been before, and of course we haven't talked about reincarnation here in this show yet, but in the past we have, and we know that this earth life that we are in now is not our first time here. We've been here before, and then, so this is like a journey we grow over time. So how you describe that now, that's really, it start to make sense that yes, this uncertainty, only uncertainty of the thing that we don't know right now. But as we walk forward with confidence and observing nature and learning from nature and so on, we will, we are making progress like that. So yes, Brother Femi, I want to just go a little bit further, because you can observe nature and you can see, but there are teachings, and Brother Gregory has mentioned, of course, the Quran messages there. And I just thought it might be good for the listeners to have a little bit more of what the Quran message says about we human beings. We talked about our characteristics of having free will, and we talked about the laws, that we must observe those laws. But let's explore a bit more, which can be uncertain for people, because I can say the only thing we are certain, most of us human beings on the earth, is that we are born and that we die. And some people think, maybe, and we talk about reincarnation, I know, but it's like, what actually are we, because we know with reincarnation it's not a body. And so what I'm trying to say is, let's go a little bit further in our journey of exploration with understanding from the Quran message that what is this life all about? So we can reduce this uncertainty, because as soon as we reduce the uncertainty, we feel at home, isn't it? It's like you feel at peace. So I would like to ask you, Brother Femi, what else about us, so following on from Brother Gregory, can we know about ourselves that will bring us more certainty? That, yes, we are born, and we grow up, eat food, everything, marriage, and so on, and then die. And then we come back reincarnate. But what else is this life about for us human beings?
Okay, thank you for the question. I always like to look at these things from the perspective of the individual, because there are so many layers to any of these themes or topics that we're trying to explore. On my way here today, someone sent me a short paragraph talking about living each day as if it was our last day on earth. And I was reflecting on it, because these are things which you hear a lot of people say, that if you lived each day as if it was your last day, your attitude would be different, and so on and so forth. And I coming here, I was reflecting on it, that is that really right? That because if I were to think to myself that I'm going to pass away next week, naturally the nature of what matters to me would change drastically. So even though we're talking about uncertainties, we're talking about anxieties, a lot of those things which would have created anxiety in me today would literally vanish just by the virtue of the fact that I know I'm going to pass away next week. Perhaps the nature of what I will now become anxious about suddenly changes, because now I'm thinking to myself, okay, so when I pass away, where on earth am I going to find myself? What on earth am I going to be doing there? What about all the people that I'm leaving behind? And so on and so forth. But the point that I made to this gentleman was that if I were to live my life as if I would pass away next week, then there is a real likelihood that I will actually miss a lot of things that I need for my personal development. Because those things which I need, which I should be actively working on, focused on, I'm working towards, I would completely ignore them, because I would consider them as not being necessary anymore, as being totally irrelevant. And the gentleman replied to me and said he wasn't looking at it from that perspective, that he was looking at it more from the perspective of the way you would interact with anybody who comes within your sphere. That if you know you are going to be seeing someone for the last time, for instance, how would you actually interact with that person? Would you be more attentive to them? Would you give them a lot more regard and respect, and so on and so forth? Now, I know that I seem to be going off at a tangent here, because what we're talking about is certainty. But the reason why I'm doing that, again, goes back to our core, which is what really matters, what should really matter. So the man who's dying next week, and knows for sure he's dying next week, what matters to him is totally different to the man who has absolutely no recognition or no thought about the fact that death is round the corner. So looking at those two extremes brings us to an interesting point, which is, for the human being on earth today, what should really matter to us? What should really matter? Is it the fact that I want to become a millionaire and I need to become preoccupied with how much money I'm going to make on a daily basis or in the next year? Is it the fact that I want to grow my business that should really matter to me? Is it my health that I need to be well and healthy so that I can see my grandchildren and help them that should matter to me? Or is it my spirit that should matter to me, because one day I know I'm going to leave this earth? So should I wait until I'm ready to leave the earth before I actually start worrying about those irrelevant things? Or is it something that I should begin to reflect on now? And the key point is this: the spirit governs everything. The spirit governs that which manifests in the physical for all of us. So when we are talking about a river flowing, one of the key things that mankind has always tried to do is to understand what is the source of the river. Where does this river actually start flowing from? Because that has a lot to do with what happens downstream. And the same thing applies to us. We are spiritual in nature. Everything that we experience here in the physical is purely a manifestation of something spiritual in nature. And so fundamentally, our focus naturally has to stem from that which is spiritual in nature. And through a clearer, more accurate and beneficial understanding of that which is spiritual in nature, then that which manifests for each individual in their day-to-day life will suddenly begin to take on a very different nature, a very different perspective. The way you see things will begin to shift. The level of anxiety that you subject yourself to, because bear in mind that we are the ones subjecting ourselves to this anxiety. It's not somebody else that is doing it to us. It's all a question of how we filter the reality of what we're experiencing and how we're absorbing that within us. That is what determines these nature of anxieties that we experience. So what should matter to us? The spiritual. Now, when we talk about spirituality, this is totally different from religion. Religion, whether you're talking about the Buddhist faith, the Christian faith, Muslims, religion attempts, it's an attempt to help the individual to actually recognize their spirituality and to rise above that which is purely material, that which is purely physical. Unfortunately, as we know, religion itself has actually become a problem for the many, for 1,001 reasons which I will not even attempt to start going into now. And so, in the final analysis, when we realize that what really matters The only thing that really matters is spirituality. And spirituality is not a collective thing. Spirituality is a personal journey that each individual must go through, that each individual must experience in the process of developing themselves, in the process of recognizing who they are, what responsibilities have been imposed on them by their creator, and what they're meant to be fulfilling within their community. That journey is a personal journey which each person can and must go through. Of course, if there is help along the path in coming to all these recognitions and awareness, then it makes things somewhat easier. That help does come in various forms. Discussions with people, reading various literature, delving into one's inner being to try and make sense of what's going on around you, and so on and so forth. But something which, through my own personal journeys, I have found to be incredibly invaluable, whichever way I try to dissect it, are the key principal coordinates that the Grow Message gives. Not only do these coordinates help with being able to clearly map out where you are through your journey in life, but it actually helps to retrace your footsteps back to where you started that journey from. And when you suddenly realize that I should be heading north, but I'm actually heading south very rapidly, so how do I change directions and move towards the North Pole, which is where I want to be? Again, the key nuggets and steps that would help in that journey are clearly displayed here. Like I said, religion has a place in the lives of many people. Some get disillusioned after being incredibly religious, probably even fanatically religious. The question is why? Remember what we said earlier on. The truth is consistent, it's reliable, it does not change. And so the person who's changing their jumping from one church to another, jumping from one mosque to another, or probably even changing religions, that clearly shows that that person recognizes that something is not right, and that person's spirit is longing for the path that will get them to the place of certainty and the place of reassurance of who they are and how they are. It's a journey, like I said, that we all need to go through. There are no quick fixes to these things. The only key is that the individual makes the effort to equip himself or herself with the knowledge that will act as very clear lamp posts in pursuing that journey. And I certainly would recommend for our listeners to examine the Grow Message. It's a unique book with unique insights, with unique clarity and simplicity in terms of how the myriad of day-to-day issues that we have to deal with is presented to us. But ultimately, as I've said, nobody can do it for us. The individual has to make that journey himself and herself towards personal salvation and towards spiritual recognition. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother Femi. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday night spiritual discussion program. As Brother Femi has mentioned, the aim is to introduce you to the Grow Message in the Light of Truth by Abu Shin. And if you want to know more about the Grow Message, or you want to get a copy for yourself, you can find it on this website, but of course you can Google as well. So the website is www.grailmessage.com. I'm going to spell that, www.grailmessage, Grail message, message.com. And the topic for tonight is, I'm sure you've heard it a few times now, living with uncertainty. So please do join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us here in the UK, it is 079 444 31366. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 31366. And we do have a question from a listener, which I'm going to read out, and I'm going to ask now one of my colleagues to reply. The question is this: can one be deeply spiritual and desire financial wealth in addition, or are these two contradictory? So I'm going to repeat the question. Can one be deeply spiritual and desire financial wealth in addition, or are these two contradictory? Who would like to answer that one, please? Brother Femi is ready to answer that. Thank you, Brother Femi.
I think that there is absolutely no contradiction in spirituality and wealth. Unfortunately, the various teachings in the Bible, for various reasons, certain things were misinterpreted. So, for instance, if we take the scenario of Jesus Christ and the tax collector, who was so preoccupied and so focused on collecting tax, because that was where he also got his wealth from. When he asked the master, Jesus Christ, what should I do to enter the kingdom of heaven, to go back to paradise, he was given the very simple answer. I'm paraphrasing here: get rid of your wealth and follow the path to the Lord, which basically meant do not be preoccupied with wealth. Unfortunately, that parable has been misinterpreted in so many ways that, there is a divergence between being wealthy and being able to pursue the kingdom of the Lord. That is not true. What the reality actually is, whilst here on earth we all need money. Money is useful. What we must not do, however, is put ourselves in a scenario where money becomes the pure ultimate goal of all that we do. And so the money actually starts driving you, and the need for the money, or the need to accumulate wealth, becomes your primary objective in life. That is totally wrong. The human spirit that is truly spiritually inclined and that is truly spiritually alive will recognize that money is actually a byproduct. Money in itself is not what matters. Of course, like I said, we need money, but money is a byproduct. What ultimately matters is being of service. How are you of service to your community? How are you of service to your family? How are you of service to your friends? If indeed you put yourself in a position where you can attain that, then the byproduct, which is money that comes your way, is something that you do not need to struggle for. The other thing we also need to recognize is that there are so many extremely wealthy people that are incredibly unhappy. And at the same time, there are very wealthy people that are totally fulfilled in their lives. the question becomes one of what are they doing differently? What are their priorities? And you would find that those who are actually incredibly happy with their lives are the ones that have transcended the need for the money itself to totally dominate their lives. If I think about someone like Bill Gates, for instance, who made all this money and actually recognized that what exactly is the purpose of the money anyway? So let me give the money away. Not only is he personally achieving a great level of inner satisfaction, but the truth is in giving the money away, he actually ends up making more money than the money that he's given away. Because there is a natural flow in life, and the more you give, the more you actually get. But the giving has to be of a genuine nature, not of a coldly calculated nature where at the back of the mind what is being done is in the expectation of something else coming back to you. So spirituality and wealth are certainly not divergent at all. The man who is truly spiritual in the right way recognizes that he needs financial resources here on earth to live a decent life, to help others, and to actually achieve even a greater level of spiritual maturity. We need to be clear about that. Hopefully that's helped answer the question.
Thank you very much, Brother Femi. I want to ask my fellow colleagues, is there anything they would like to share with the listeners from the Grail message? Anything they would like to read out? Let me ask, Brother Gregory, is there anything you'd like to share?
Not today.
Not today. And Brother Reiner, anything from you?
No.
No?
I think.
Okay, I can see Brother Femi looking for something, but while he's looking, shall we carry on with the next question, Brother Femi?
Oh yes, yes, please.
So, okay. So, yes, Brother Gregory. We just talked about money, but I've got a different one this time. Marriage, future of marriage. Let's say there are two people who are a good match, but somehow it still leads to a breakdown in the marriage later in the future. So is there a way, to predict the future of a marriage really in this where specifically you could say you could look at it that the people are a good match and it breaks down, or it could be that they were not a good match from the start and it led to break down that way as well. So yeah, is there a way of some way of knowing that? That's to Brother Gregory.
Thank you. Since you mentioned prediction, then one can say, of course, definitely. But one would like to use a very simple example. Maybe we'll bring it home. One is aware nowadays that many people like football and they enjoy it. It has become a form of religion to them. If you have two people in a team, or if you have 11 people in a team, they have goals. They wish to cooperate so that they can win their matches, so that whatever opponent they have, they are able to overcome. Therefore, they cooperate. They ensure that each one is fit and strong. They encourage one another to achieve the goal. Even if they have personal disagreement, because they wish to achieve their goal to become champions, they put their disagreements besides apart and cooperate to achieve that goal. Therein, a marriage should be the same. That there is a goal that the couple wish to attain. That does not mean there will be no challenges, but that high goal takes precedence. Whenever you have a couple that have set their eyes on the high goal and strive to achieve it, then many of the distractions can easily be overcome.
Thank you. Okay, I think Brother Femi, you have something
Yes,
you would like to read?
yes,
Yes, so
I would like to read
please
something.
tell us where you're reading it
So
from.
this is a chapter, some excerpts from a chapter in a lecture called "What Must a Man Do to Enter the Kingdom of Heaven?" So I'm just going to read a couple of chapters from here, which you should have.
Paragraphs.
It goes as follows: Let man consider if he wishes to enter the realm of the spirit, he must naturally journey there. He must walk there. It does not come to him. The spiritual realm lies at the summit of creation. Indeed, it is the highest point itself. In order not to lose his way, it is imperative that he should have a thorough knowledge of the whole distance he has to traverse, not only the way itself, but also everything he may meet en route, the dangers that threaten him, and the help he can count upon. Since the road lies entirely within creation, in fact is creation, the wanderer who journeys towards the spiritual realm must become absolutely familiar beforehand with the creation which leads him there, for he needs must pass through it, otherwise he will not reach his goal. So, to the listeners, hopefully that points out two critical things. We are here on earth as spirit beings. Our source is from a spiritual dimension which we need to find our way back to. How do we find our way back to that spiritual dimension? We need to get knowledge, real knowledge that simplifies, clarifies, and explains all the components of what makes up the creation that we are allowed to journey through, so that as we proceed in that journey, as the reading rightly said, we have more clarity on the nature of the dangers that we're exposed to and the helps that are available to us. And if we do that, this whole issue of anxiety, of uncertainty, of not knowing who to turn to or where to turn will still be there. It will not disappear overnight. It will still be there, but it will become much more manageable for the individual in question. And over time, not only would things become so much clearer and easier, but from deep within the individual's soul, the anxiety vanishes and will actually be replaced by an inner joy that results in constant and continuous gratitude to his creator for the opportunity to be alive and to develop. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Femi.
Can I just add something?
Yes, go ahead, Brother Rainer.
I think the key word in what Brother Femi read is becoming familiar with creation. So the way back to where we came from, the spiritual paradise, is creation itself. That's the way. And he was saying we have to become familiar with creation, familiar with that way. In that familiarity is already implied that I lose my anxiety because what I'm familiar with is already my home. I'm familiar with my surroundings where I live, and I feel at home, much more at ease. If I go to a foreign place I know nothing about, the jungle, and don't know the dangers, I feel frightened, or I feel anguish. I'm wary. What can happen next? So to decrease that insecurity we have and the uncertainties we are facing, I have to become familiar with our surroundings, and I have to become familiar with creation. And that's exactly what the Grail message does. One can express it like this: it makes you familiar with creation. As a result of the familiarity, you will feel more at home, your anxieties decrease, your insecurities decrease, and that's on all levels and in every respect. So because it's a closed thing, if you are in one thing really right, it forces almost to be correct in other things. That's in the logic of in the logic of things. That everything is completely interconnected logically without any gaps in between. If you make one thing right, there are other things which are also set right. Those other things can be marriage, or it can be anything under the world, all the questions you're having. But so it has a beneficial effect all over, and the clarity spreads in all other respects. What you have to do, what with respect to money, what with respect to marriage, what with respect to interaction with other human beings, with your business partners, with books. But the essential thing is we have to become familiar with creation, because creation is the way back home, back to paradise. And that's really the Grail message. It's kind of the book of creation. It's explaining creation.
Thank you, Brother Rainer. I've got a question for you. It's slightly sort of, I don't know if it's off topic, but it's in the news. So and people have been talking a lot about this. And you know, in the world today, lots of different sort of diseases or lots of illnesses are around, and you know, people like suffering things which are like, let's say something like a vegetative state where the human being is alive in that body, but he can't do anything, and then somebody has to look after him, his, you know, wife or whoever it is, or hospice, wherever they happen to be. And nowadays there's quite a debate going on whether, what's the point of this person, basically they want assisted suicide, where, or assisted dying is the word they use, where there's no point for that person to carry on living in that state when they can't do anything in that, you know, in that body, and nobody can have, you know. And they even say that it's not very dignified for them to die the way, you know, how they suffer, you know, when they become into that state. So there are people who are, let's say, at this moment haven't reached that state yet, but they want to have the right to allow them, when they do reach that state, that they're not capable of doing anything themselves, and it's like, you know, just sitting in a shell basically. So they're asking for that right to be allowed to die, and then the law to be changed to not that person who assists them to die, that they're not convicted of, you know, killing that person, because it's with their permission that they're doing. So I wanted to ask you, how can we, is this like, from the Grail message understanding, would that be acceptable, that somebody can say, okay, my life on the earth is not, let's say, I can't really live properly as a human being is meant to do, so can I not end it now? And then, because as I said, it would be undignified to carry on, and only, now I couldn't do anything anyway in that vegetative state body.
I think those questions of that nature which arise now And it's not only this, there are many questions arising everywhere of a similar nature, where people are faced with a really dire situation and have to decide this way or that way. And we must say, of course, those situations which arise left, right and center are of course the result of that we never made ourselves familiar with creation. And this unfamiliarity, of course, caused all kinds of poisonous results and evil results. Those results are terrible illnesses and terrible accidents on all levels, on the individual level, in economy, in relation between peoples and states. There will be disastrous situations, anything. Out of each situation, it is very difficult to retrace ourselves and to say this is right or not right. Now, talking about this person, those millions of persons which come into a situation that they are practically in a coma and are trapped in the body, for each of them, the first question is, why have they come into this situation? And can they still learn something from that situation? And them being forced into that situation already shows, if you go from a spiritual point of view, it is a product of reciprocal action. You have sown it somehow, however you put it, in most cases, that you have come into this situation. Let us assume he never believed in the spirit, or never believed that there is something like a spirit. He's brain dead, and suddenly, and also he's brain dead, but he might not see anything, but people around him see that he reacts to things. He reacts to presences and of the mother approaching and the father approaching. And there's just a child at the moment in the United States. I think it's even shown on YouTube, where the parents show how they come to the child which is brain dead and just reacts to all kinds of things. So it shows the world many things. For one thing, it shows brain dead does not mean that that person is dead. There's still something which reacts. Now, so it's already very helpful for the people observing this, and they should really rethink their opinions. If brain death or the destruction of the brain, if that's really a criteria for calling someone dead. And the next thing is, we do not know what that person inside experiences. And so in that situation, if he has chosen, so the best thing, in my opinion, would be leave it up to nature what nature does. Do not interfere to prolong the life artificially by any means. But we are in a terrible situation, and we should realize that we have caused those wrongs. We have produced those situations through the law of reciprocal action, and not interfere. If now people decide beforehand this way or that way, they really should ask themselves, well, do I really know such a lot that I can say this is not of benefit to me anymore? If they are complete materialists and say I'm brain dead, I'm gone, and he decides that way, of course, he might still and he might decide I take some kind of potion, or I put a plastic bag over my head, or how they do in Switzerland, or how they allow it in Switzerland, or that I decide the machines are being switched off. Well, he will go through the results, he will go through that experience, and perhaps he might be quite desperate and wants to say some things to other people, or he just realizes, so he creates a new situation for him, a new experience he has to go through. And so my answer is, it's very difficult to say, and it's a terribly, well, I use the word now, a screwed up situation we find ourselves in. And there are lots of wrong decisions being taken, and without the trust, people deprive themselves of finding insight by doing the wrong situations. By, let's say, deciding to stop any kind, to have an assisted suicide. He might do it too early, but people have to go through. So there is not a general answer to such cases. It is, we know the direction we can go to, and the direction would be become familiar with creation, and those situations will become less and less frequent. Generally, we are in such a confused state, and if it is possible to get out of this confused state, or this turmoil on any kind of level, is very difficult. It might well be that beforehand everything has to break down and we have to start anew. But definitely this starting anew, I think we should concentrate on the individual level. On the individual level, I know I should ask myself, why am I so? If I know nothing about the Grail message, what do I search? What am I looking for? Why is there this disquiet, this agitation? Why are the people shouting? Why are the scientists in a rebellion against God and trying to prove there is no God, and saying that every minute? Where does this all come from? And trying to become clear what you are actually searching, and trying to get some firm foothold, and to find some certainties again, however small they are at the beginning, and improve that way. And if many similar, if many people do that, of course, a very beneficial effect will take place all over. Those situations will become much less, but I would say we are just reaping what we wanted all the time, and now we have very poisonous and bitter fruit to eat, but we wanted it, and it's very beneficial that we have to eat those fruit, and perhaps we become more humble and really say, we cannot cope on our own anymore. We do not know creation, and that's why there is failure on all fronts. And one of the fronts is just what you just mentioned. Back to you.
Yes, just thank you for that. Just, I mean, the people who are arguing, in fact, this is the person who is, when you hear it in the news, it's not, so the scientist involved in this particular case is the person who himself knows that maybe in 1 month or 2 months, or maybe 6 months, whatever it is, they're going to go into that vegetative state where they will be basically a useless person. But right now their mind, everything is working, and they want to make like a sign.
Make a last will decision, right. But we have to know,
yes.
Does he know what the human being is when he makes that decision? He thinks, okay, I do not believe in a life after death. I just believe there's the brain, so yes. Why suffer on? But he does not know it. He makes his decision in a state of ignorance, and then he has to carry those results. And I know that that people are forced now to make a decision, also similar decisions like what happens with my organs if I should have an accident and I'm brain dead. Should I allow it or not? Instinctively now, people in Germany, the majority start rejecting the idea that their organs are being taken. They do not know exactly why, but there's an instinctive resistance against it. And the government and the political media try to break it down. And the doctors say, unless someone explicitly contradicts and say he does not want to have his organs removed, we will remove them. Of course, the political pressure and having a certain picture of the human being, and the picture of the human being is a materialistic picture now. There is the body, there's the brain, and there is no soul or anything, and there's no purpose in life. Of course, if I take those assumptions, I can well say, okay, he's brain dead. Why not exploit the machinery and take some parts out of this, remove some parts for other people which are waiting for it to have it. But all those decisions are based on assumptions, because even if people think they are certain, they do not know, they're in complete ignorance of what the human being is. And so I say, okay, if you think that way and you never cared about anything else, and you think, oh, you decide you have your organs removed, then have them removed when you're brain dead. Perhaps it helps very much if they see a film how such people struggle against the removal and how they are shying back, and when the operation comes. But of course those films are very rarely shown in public. That would make people perhaps think a little more. But generally speaking, we must think of the assumptions on which people base their decisions, and the assumptions now, the prevalent opinion is there is no God, there's a hostility against God, and life, there's just the material body and there's nothing but the brain. And of course you make completely different decisions to someone who says, oh, every experience I have is a valuable thing. Even the experience of having to be cared and looked after for 100% for some time. And I just want to express my thankfulness if I am looked after. But since that fate has that in store for me, I think there is some meaning in that, and I will go through it till my time comes. And that decision is based on a completely different assumption, a completely different picture of the human being. And we have to be now aware that many decisions, or most decisions, are based on a completely wrong picture of the human being, and a completely wrong picture of why we are here on Earth. And and that was really the topic of today. We are alien here. We are aliens in the universe. We are alienated from nature. We are alienated, isolated from the other human beings because of the dominance of the intellect, and so wrong decisions are taken all the time.
If I can,
Yes, go ahead, Brother Femi.
just quickly continue on that. Again, a fairly topical issue. Stephen Hawking, Professor Stephen Hawking, who died earlier on, or he passed away earlier on this year from motor neuron disease, which he was diagnosed with in his 20s, and he actually managed to live through to his 70s, even though for the last few decades of his existence he could not move any part of his body apart from maybe very slight finger movements. And yet it was during this degenerative period that he actually achieved his greatest achievement, most people that have motor neuron would normally pass on within maximum couple of years, if that. And it would have been very easy for him or for those around him to have concluded that this is a death sentence. Why not just end it all? Why watch yourself degenerate over the next few years that you're going to pass on in 2 years or 3 years time? So why not just end it all? And here he was, 50 years later, he was still alive, and he had achieved so much in the process. Coming here this afternoon, I saw a driveway that was beautifully paved, but somewhere in the middle of that driveway was a weed that was struggling to exist. And it just struck me at the time when I saw this weed that, isn't it amazing how nature is constantly pushing for life? Nature is constantly pushing for survival, and it's constantly pushing for growth. And where a transition needs to happen, which will happen to all of us at one point in time or the other, it should not really be something that we force on ourselves or that we force on those around us. It should be something that we allow nature to take its natural course, and when it's time to pass on, that will happen naturally.
Thank you. I actually received a question when Brother Rainer was talking, and in a way, well, I'm just going to say the question, and then we can just say what we want to answer on that question. So the question is from a listener, saying, what about people who commit suicide or who desire suicide? Is this acceptable? And Brother Rainer, you were speaking at the time when this question arrived. So the listeners asking that please, the person who's speaking, can they answer this question? So I'll just repeat the question. What about people who commit suicide or who desire suicide? Is this acceptable?
Well, this is just the same question. I mean, the person saying, I want to be killed off when I'm in a, inverted commas, vegetable state. It's saying, I want to be killed, and because it's saying it itself, it's a kind of suicide. And as our brother said, I would say let us reap the experiences until nature decides that we should go. And a person who decides on suicide, it's a very willful act. He's deciding himself that, okay, I end my life for whatever reason, and
thank you. Carry on, Brother Rainer. Apologies for
yes. Yeah. And he's deciding, I do not care what fate has in store with me. I do not care for the many experiences which fate still wants me to go through. And since fate is being created as part of the will of God, as part of, is created by the law of reciprocal action, he really is rebelling. It's a rebellion against the will of God, against this this law of reciprocal action. So I think with suicide, I do not think that it never can be right, in my opinion.
Thank you.
There can be, of course, suicides of a different kind. I just want to mention that.
Okay.
There is in one of the films, which I saw early, in one of the Fellini films, there is a couple, and it shows a stoic suicide of a couple, and they are sitting in a farm, and they know some enemies are, an enemy army is coming to them, and they know they will be degraded terribly and being humiliated, and to avoid that degradation, they commit suicide. But that is, in my opinion, that is a completely different case. Let us say I'm a couple and I know some ISIS Muslims come and I'm a completely different religion. I know that I'm being killed, but I know that my wife certainly will be raped and being put in some place where she's a prostitute for the ISIS fighters because she's an infidel, and she will be degraded and will have to go through hell. That might be a different case, and I do not know how one should decide there. There, a suicide might be really might be really the right thing to do.
I object to that because I've heard, read, seen many young girls that were prisoners in Africa in war scenarios that were massively abused during the process. Some of them managed to escape, some of them were released, and they ended up becoming such huge towers of strength to so many through their own personal experience. So in the recognition that the perfection of the laws of life will never ever put you into a scenario that you do not need for your own personal spiritual development. If we truly understand that and we truly believe that, then we must embrace all the experiences that life puts our way. And where the individual has truly developed to such a state that they do not need such an experience, then quite naturally it will not be presented to them. So taking one's life under any circumstances because through your intellect you are forecasting or projecting a very unpleasant future scenario and believing that the easy way out is self-destruction, it cannot be right, in my view.
Thank you, Brother Femi. What I'm going to say is, just very briefly to sort of round this off, because we've come to the end of our show now. Everybody, let's say somebody wants to commit suicide, they're making choice there, and then every choice or every decision has a consequence. Now, as you said, Brother Rainer, you need to be familiar with this creation, to really make a knowledgeable, choice. Now, those who are making it without the knowledge, there's a consequence for them if they do it, and then those who are doing with the knowledge. At the end of the day, in most cases, you could say, people are trying to escape from something when they want to commit suicide. And all they're going to do is, they're going to enter in the beyond, and then there's going to be consequence over there. So, it's like out of one fire, out of the frying pan into another fire. So we know basically life is continuous, and so it's not like you jump out of one earth and then you just escape what you're, and you're, out of that. That's the consequence of what you are right now facing, and then by committing suicide you escape from it. Of course, there's no escape. The laws are there. It's just that you didn't know. That's like Brother Ran, like you said. People don't know what they're doing, and really they do need to know. And however they make the decision, there will be a consequence to whichever way they make the decision. But obviously, from everything that you have been saying, is the right way is always to follow nature and not let nature take its course. And yes,
I think yes, what Brother Femi said. I probably am of the same opinion. I'm of the many people I was thinking of in the Bible, the Christians, like Peter, who was nailed to the cross. He knew he was going to be nailed to the cross, and he decided to be nailed with the head down. And he did not avoid this terrible experience by suicide, beforehand suicide. So, and the girls, let us say in Nigeria, who are those 300 schoolgirls or something who have been abducted, all the women, well then in the hands of the, whatever that Muslim group, Boko Haram is called, perhaps, and he's saying, okay, it might be that it's their fate, but it might probably, if they really want to, God will perhaps show them a way out of this terrible situation they have to go through. And of course one thinks, if you know you are being crucified, like the Christians were, who so courageously faced their death. I mean, they knew they are going to be crucified. I mean, all respect for it, and probably they did the right thing. They definitely helped that the knowledge of Christ and the belief in Christ spread so much, because the people surrounding those crucifixions in Rome, in the Roman Empire, they saw those people, they didn't fear death, the most terrible death, and did not evade it. And like this, they testified to their belief that it's unshakable, that nothing can bring them from forsaking that statement, I believe in God, I believe in Jesus Christ, and I'm willing to die for it. I think without this, that courage of those people, Christianity would not have spread that way. So, yeah, I'm inclined very much to agree with Brother Femi on this point, however terrible it is to think about such things.
Thank you very much. Dear listeners, we have come to the end of our show tonight. Hope you enjoyed the discussion. Brother Sayom, our next presenter, is in the house, in the studio, so I'm going to welcome him in a second, but I'm going to ask my fellow colleagues if they'd like to say anything to the listeners as we say goodbye. Just so you know, dear listeners, the next week's show, Tuesday, I will not be around. Brother Femi is going to take my place. So yes, I would welcome him for that. Yes, the topic is the survey of creation. This is the topic for next Tuesday. So again, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. as always. So I'm going to ask, yes, Brother Femi, would you like to say goodbye to our listeners and anything you'd like to tell them?
Yes, so I hope you've learned one or two useful things from today's session. Wishing everybody a pleasant evening. We've already overran, so we'll try and wrap it up quickly, but looking forward to joining with everyone next week. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Brother Rainer, please, anything you'd like to say?
Simple goodbye till next week, that we are surveying the creation.
Survey of creation, that's it. We'll be surveying the creation, that's right. And Brother Gregory, please, anything you'd like to say?
Wishing everybody a beautiful week, and we'll meet again next week.
Thank you very much. So dear listeners, thank you for being with us. As always, the aim of our show is to introduce you to the Grail Message. I'll just say it briefly. You can go to this website, www.grailmessage.com. You can get more information, get a copy for yourself. That's what we encourage you to do. All the best. Have a great week. Brother Sayom, would you like to join us and say anything to our listeners? How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fine. I'm doing wonderful, actually. I mean, I'm doing really good. I'm feeling very charged up.
Good to hear that.
Yeah, I'll be with y'all soon in a few minutes and starting my show. Good. Since I've been doing this, it's like I've been working out. As I'm being just recently been doing this about the fifth show now, I said, okay, I'm gonna kind of work out what I'm going to be deciding to be calling the show, because it is about spirituality, most certainly.
Yes.
And that is so I've decided it is revolution, okay?
Revolution.
We do need transformation. Yes. But what my show is now, and this is what it will be continually, is Spirit True Reality. Okay? Show. It's the Spirit True Reality Show, because Spirit is the true reality of ourselves. And this is the premise that is going to be the foundation of all the other shows. So the revolution aspect of consciousness will also fit within it. But so I just feel to define it more clearly as what I've just pronounced.
Spiritual reality show.
Spirit true.
Is spirit true?
Spirit true reality. Yeah.
Okay.
You have the term spirituality. Yeah.
Yes.
This is how it sounds. Yeah.
Yeah.
But how it also phonetically comes through is spirit true reality.
Is that
Because-
true as in TRUE?
Exactly. So spirit true reality show, because spirit is the true reality of ourselves. And this is the premise, the foundation for all future trajectories. Okay?
Thank you very much.
So speak to you soon.
Yes.
I'll be starting on my show in the next 5 minutes, but I'm going to play some music first. So
Okay.
to all the flutes, the earth, the souls out there listening, don't go nowhere. Just stay tuned, okay?
Okay, we're just going to play a few ads while the music comes on in a mo. Thank you.